Thank you very much, Deepika, for all your kind words. And the secret of whatever you were attributing to me is that I am constantly keep young, youthful, energetic company of my former students like you and so many others, all part of the family, who keep nourishing me, my energies and my spirit. So I think whatever verve and enthusiasm for life that I sort of managed to have is I'm very grateful to my young friends and my family of students. Now, coming to the topic of the day, I would first of all, I can be seen and heard because uh, I can be seen and heard well by everyone.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello,
Yes, sir, we can.
and I also take this opportunity to greet everyone who has spared or missed on their evening walk or constitutional or whatever they were doing to be coming and joining us all for this lecture. So welcome to everyone, and I'm very grateful for your presence. Coming to the agenda of the day, before I start talking on the screen, I would like to just share a few thoughts, general thoughts, so that the presentation is contextualized a little better and perhaps make the connection also to everyone a little more focused. Uh, One thing, of course, is that in whatever bravado or whatever zestful we may found, the present pandemic, the COVID, has willy-nilly, had a very, I would say, tectonic effect shift on our lives, and it's almost an apocalyptic moment for the world, for the humankind, and but the point is not to sort of moan and groan, but to get on with life with a reasonably good amount of spirit by reinventing ourselves and by adapting ourselves. And the impulse to go for this topic was, besides a little, you can say, it was a mix of strands of thought. One was to get away from it all, the imprisonment that we have in our homes in the cities, and the bit of an armchair traveler, if you say, a bit of nostalgic journeys for me, because many of the pictures that I'll be showing you, I photographed about 32 years away before, on when there were no digital cameras. So it's part travelogue, part nostalgia, but also at the same time, it is going to draw our attention on the very time-tested building tradition of our indigenous architectures and the geographies they belong to. And there are so many timeless lessons in them, and that's what I would specifically be trying to share with the architectural friends. And everyone has a dream of having a home in the hills, so that's why I gave the topic also. And also, I think the very point that this pandemic has made mankind or humankind to reconsider its position versus vis-a-vis, the house, the neighborhood, the architecture, the cities, the very notion of cities. And certainly, from the big thing about big cities and big high-rises and from the metropolitan as engines of growth, we are having now second thoughts that maybe for civilization it's not been a very good idea to be too many people huddled in two small places, and our divorce from nature of which we are umbilical cords we are connected to, it needs to be reconsidered. And so as we go along, on, I will like develop this team, and then later on, I will be, of course, very happy to. I'm going to share the screen now, and so is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Hello.
Now we can see it, sir.
Okay. Okay. So. Okay, this is a very title slide, and it was. It's just a symbolic depiction of.
मेरी फोटो क्यों नहीं आई बहन?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Go on.
Please continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So this picture I took about 4 years back on a, inaugural visits to Manali, and the whole place, you just want to run away from the humdrum of the city to this such a peaceful and scenic pure air. And in fact, that reminds me that during the lockdown, the air quality improved so much that there were pictures in the newspapers that all the views, snow-capped mountains, could be seen from Jalandhar rooftop. So when the air is clean and we get our act together, I mean, when we don't abuse the nature, it has so many benedictions for us. And we at Chandigarh, we are all the time, the most exhilarating view is of the hills, the Shivaliks. And that's why I think Chandigarhians have a special affinity to the hills, and we escape to them whenever we get a little time. Let me move on to the next screen. What's happening? Okay. And let me, the slide is not moving.
So you can either click on the screen only, or on your screen only. If you click twice, I think it will go forward.
Yeah. Okay. No, here I got it. Okay. Now this is to a more visual, you can say image of what my words were probably would have failed to. But it's not all wonderful, beautiful, which we as tourists or which we as occasional travelers to the hills, we feel. For the people who are living there, who sort of are the dwellers of remote areas, the hills, of course, are very beautiful and very pure and very, marvelously, panoramic. But at the same time, they are very challenging. The elements of nature are extremely, trying, and survival is not easy for those who are in the far-flung areas, and when the development was not very, they were not very well connected. So there can be very, like these places on the higher reaches where the tree belt stops, in Leh and Kargil. So it's a desolate landscape, like lunar landscape. And so the elements of nature are very strong. There can be snows, there can be thunderstorms, there can be. So one has to also take cognizance of that the shelters that we make, those people who make there, for them it's not only romanticizing the hills. But coming to the geography of the area I'm going to speak on, that is the Himachal Pradesh. Of course, we all know that Himachal means abode of snows, land of snows. But it is actually a very much, abode of God. Because temples were always built on, high locations and, on the peaks, so that they could be visible from a distance on the high point, and beckoned everyone to the folds of the Almighty. And Himachal has 4 major, besides, meadows, lush green valleys, rivers. It has 4 major, hill ranges, mountain ranges, which are all, of course, part of the Great Himalayas. And Chandigarh is blessed by the skyline of the Shivaliks, and I think no Chandigarhian can do without his ritualistic, walk at that lake, because it is from there that you get the most beautiful view of the hills. So the abode of gods, and nature's paradise is always in our sights at Chandigarh. We're very fortunate that way. Now, you see, first of all, why should we be talking about vernacular architecture when we know that the whole building industry that has been now almost in a, whether even the architects, we are being actually controlled, or you can say, the building industry is gaming the builders, and the builders are gaming the, end users, the people who buy houses, and the architects. Even if they're very fiercely independent, they have to very often bow to the, fashion cycles of modernism and architecture or whatever. But actually, when you go back to the, especially the hill areas and the remoteness, has relatively kept them pristine and still untouched, or relatively definitely more innocent of the changing things, processes happening in these latter areas. So vernacular actually is nothing more than spontaneous, uncultivated, anonymous, indigenous, and popular architecture. Unlike mainstream architecture produced by a trained architect, does not go through any fashion cycle and is immutable and constant. Because when you build with the very with the local materials, there is one master craftsman of the village who is also the carpenter, who is also the metal, iron smith, and who is also the latest, the local builder, and also the aesthete, who's in the art. In the good old days, if you look at the miniature paintings of the Himachal Pradesh, or the Pahari miniature paintings, उनके पीछे लिखा होता है Manku Karkhana, which times there were like studios or workshops where everything used to happen. There would be about 15, 20, and there were apprentices, somebody doing. Even the miniature paintings were done by the carpenters. Many of them are attributed to the Tarkhan. Unke piche Dr. Goswami's lectures have illuminated me on this point. And in this, on the left, while you see, you can see what is the relationship of the built form or the settlement. It nestles with the order of nature. And on the right-hand side screen, a very rudimentary shelter, actually it's not a house, it is the watermill. And in the good old days, the needed a grinding mill for the, hello, I can hear some voices. You needed a very local base. Hello. I think I would request that the participants may switch off the mic. The rods, इसको बोलते हैं, a very simple device of engineering which serve the purpose of the grinding of the grain. Now, how do settlements, evolve? There is a solitary hut, or maybe a couple of solitary huts at very, outliers of the hill areas. And I know for one thing that one of the charms of Chandigarh is that after the rain, the skies are very clear, and in winter sometimes you can see snow-specked hills, and Kasauli agar snow ho jaye, so it's a marvelous sight. And also at the same time at night you see the twinkling lights of the Kasauli hills. And very often philosophically, one tends to wonder or, imagine that in that dim twinkling light, there must be people living out there. That they would be having their food, they would be having their joys. You don't know who's living there, but their presence is, is sending signals to you, and it's a very source of loneliness or the relative solitude of the hill. And when a group of houses, there are more people come to live in a community space, and then it becomes a village or a settlement. And then the people start sharing some spaces, and that quite becomes the timeshare of that village. I mean, common facilities for the. One of the things you always see on the hills is that the maize is being dried, and pumpkins are being dried on the roof, and the kettle is a very part of your existence. And eventually, a temple or a local deity, a shrine to him is created, him or her, and then it begin to have a little a more intense community life, because there is a rallying point, the local temple and the festivals. The Kullu Dashera is nothing else but it's a congregation of the hill gods, coming for their annual, you can say, annual congress or annual, communion, and it's like a meeting, it's like a meeting of the heads of state, the local deities coming. So the hill architecture is very much shaped by a number of factors. And while it is made from local materials and with their simple technologies, the joy of living, the joy of life, the joy of communities, having festivals, rituals, and the aesthetic outlet is found in. You can see that even a simple house, these are very poor people's homes and villages. I've seen, I've photographed nearly 35. This one is somewhere as Jagat-Sukh village. So you see that the everyday routine and the everyday mundane tasks, like drying of the grain, maize, and the local carpenter brings certain kind of unadulterated, innocent beauty. Now, as I said, that the hill house or the hill architecture or the hill settlement, for us it is wonderful to photograph them, but the whole enterprise is, I would say, if somewhere you really want to see the form follows function, it is in the vernacular architecture. Because if you look at this house, it is a very simple, it answers the needs of the dwellers. On the lowermost floor, it is usually the cattle shed, because in winter it becomes very cold. And then the next story is the granary or the place to keep the fodder because the cattle is part of your livestock, is part of your family. And in fact, the body heat of the livestock keeps in the severe cold weather. It sends up some warmth to the upper floor, and then it is on the third floor you have the main residence, and balcony runs all around it, and then in the attic you have again some kind of storage space, where sometimes important things, valuables are also kept. Now, the influencing factors, as you can see on the screen, are so climate. There would be slightly different kind of vernacular architecture in the lower hills, the foothills, I would say, and there will be different kind of architecture, vernacular architecture in the higher ranges. So the climate, the house must sustain the rain, snowfall, and that's why you have the sloping roofs, and beliefs and rituals are very important. And agriculture being the major occupation and livestock, the sort of storage of grain is a very important thing. Many of the temples, later on I'll show you, they always have another structure called Bhandara, which is, and a cluster of homes or a small village or a settlement can have community silos of grains also. So what National is doesn't, as I said in the earlier statement, it doesn't undergo any fashion cycle. In Chandigarh, I noticed we started with modernism, then a time came, people got very fed up of those boxy kind of houses, and suddenly there was a fashion trend that people were breaking down the old brick and those kind of houses and making Swiss chalets with sloping roofs, fake Bangalore tiles, slates, and it became. I had gone to Switzerland at that time, and I told them, that we have more Swiss chalets in Chandigarh than you have in Mauricio. So that became
वरना तू कर नहीं रहा तो मेरे को उस पे लगा दे, मैं फोन पे देख रहा हूँ सारी प्रेजेंटेशन.
आपने मेरे को बोला कि आप
नहीं उस पे लगा देना iMac. अब लगाएगा कैसे?
हाँ लगा दूंगा.
I can hear sounds. So again, now the trend is we have those cuckoo clock homes are going away, and now you have. So there are cycles. We have Mies van der glass has suddenly become a big thing, and so the point that I'm making that the indigenous architectures are purely born out of the site and structure unity is very strong. And what are the building materials which are mostly found? Of course, the two differences. One is that you see so much of wooden architecture, and the carvings which are done by the village carpenters. Because there's an enormous presence of the deodar trees, and which are the Himalayan cedar. It's a wonderful wood. It can, without even much seasoning, remains very, very sturdy and strong and easy to work on, and which means that the carpenter, without a very, refined tools, can work on them, and it is termite proof and relatively. So it is a wonderful local resource. Now, of course, later on at the end of the lecture come that's why things are changing out there also, and we have very few instances of wood architecture left in the country. Mostly it is in the hill areas, and I think at the south also, because so the other materials are of course mud, and you can paint mud mortar or mud blood plaster, and the stone. So it is wood, stone, and mud, and the roofing is done from slate roof, which is also again locally available. Now these are a very remote village near Saran on the Rampur Bishar, the Hindustan Tibet road, where I have gone to see Jima Kali temple. And this, of course, is further elaborating on the materials that I started from the previous page. Here you see more of this mud plaster on the stone wall, and the upper floor more of wood. And in many, like Kullu Valley, and especially in Kullu Valley, I got to see more of the, and here also the temple, the more grander architecture is made from what we call as the Kathkona system. Well, this is, now I really felt that how nicely they have made the central community space. It's used for drying the rain, very poor people, and for children to play around, and the boats and the kettle pen also it becomes. Now, as I said, that geographies and dictate the vernacular architecture. Now if you go towards Kangra, which is the lower hill, there is instead of using extensively the timber, they use the walls from sun-dried bricks and plaster them from outside. But a lot of slate is available, so the roofs are still made. There is of course the wooden rafters and beams and the gable is there, but the roofing material is the slate. And how they fix the slates is also very innovative. And in the olden times, you must remember that nails were not so easily available. Iron would have come after a much longer time in the remote areas. So a little different style than what I've shown you in the upper ranges. Now, one of the very beautiful things about some of the most important structures in the hills, the temples and the palaces, is you can see this is another castle near Kullu, and this was built about more than 400 years ago, and it withstood the massive earthquake of 1905. But why, without making this lecture overly laden with technology, you should, all local technologies can be sometimes, full of wisdom. And this is a card corner where, there are alternative layers of timber beams and dry stone masonry. So one on top of another, and the these beams, they are there is an infill of, loose rubble of masonry, and as it rests, one layer rests on the other. They were not using any, you can say screws, they were just not there. So they would use these wooden dowels, and to hold the two parallel beams together, the number of joinery, a wedge was inserted, and there are at different places different kinds of joinery techniques. So now the point is that the whole structure would be without any rigidness. It would all, because the masonry was dry, the timbers are connected to one another without any rigid ends. So whenever the earthquakes or the tremors would happen, it was flexible enough to sway, and therefore they survived the earthquakes very well. Some more pictures. Excellent research done by a group of students from Ahmedabad School of Architecture and Mansi Shah and J. Thakkar. They have published a small booklet also, which is for those who are a little more interested would find very useful. You can see some pictures which are borrowed from their research about the evolution, how the Katkona, structures, the walls are coming up. Well, these are, just imagine I took them in early 1990s, and some even before that. I had a great, great passion for traveling in the far-flung areas of Himachal and taking pictures on the Ektachrome film. And some of them, like the ones they're all on transparency slide film, which I got converted into. So, but they still hold good. So the cultural practices, again, it's not only on the Shara, the local deities taken out in procession, and there are the trumpets, and there are the huge drums, these are at a temple in Chamba. And look at the great carving, and certain beliefs that the months of Baisakh, Pom, Magh, Falgun were very good for starting construction of houses. And look at the arts and crafts. the metal worker, and you go to Bhimkali temple, the huge door of is encased in silver foil, and there I saw this craftsperson. It's a very languid piece of life and a love for their work. They're not the whole systems of it was not a mass production or a time. You're not keeping an eye on the clock, but it's a timeless kind of pace of life and in tune with nature. This is at Khajiar when you go to Darjeeling. When you go to this hill station just above Pathankot, slipping out of my name. Khajiar के पास जो आता है ना वो Dalhousie. Some people would call it dull and lousy, but I found it very fascinating. That's in the area. Then you see what are the sort of professions. You have the nomads and sheep rearing for wool, and this of the local women turning wool into tapestries and spreads, rugs. This is again on a far-flung village in Rampur, Bushire, very close to the Indo-Tibet border, and you can see the features of the lady also, a little, akin to Tibetan. Now, this temple on the left, if one was to say what, basically there are four kind of temples and places of worship. This on the left is Khajiar is like a little meadow, a mini Gulmarg beyond the Dalhousie on the way to Chamba. But a very scenic spot, and I'm sure many of you have been there. In the center is a small lake, and it's turned more into a pond, and then this temple complex is there, temple of the Khaji Nath, and the place gets its name of Khajiar from there. And beautiful slate roofs. It's a very rudimentary temple, which is of the sloping roofs, or what's known as the tent style or chalet roofs. And there, and in contrast to this, you have the stone temples, Nagara style, which is just like our what is known as the northern style, and which has those stone curvilinear shikras. And the only fascinating thing is how adaptations are done. Although our the manuals or the canons for the temple styles are all ordained in the Vastu Shastra and other shastras, that complete system and what all it should have. But it was liberal enough to make these adaptations or these changes so that the rain, they were protected from the rain and snows. So this is something which is, and you find a lot of them in Kamar and Chamba along the Ravi River. Then, of course, you have the pagoda style. Those are layers and layers, especially areas which are closer to the Tibet border. There, this influence came because that time the borders were not, the cultural, architectural, aesthetic influences were, sort of from one place to another. And you see, this is one temple, Masroor, sorry. Very few people go, and it's very quiet, not far from Kamra, and we went to see it especially. It's just like the Ellora temple. It's a completely rock-cut temple. Of course, people said it never got finished, and there was something, and and then because of the Buddhism and Tibet influence, you have the monasteries. But I would say most of the monasteries in around Manali and all, or Dharamsala, are not very old. they were built with the Dalai Lama coming to. So there are coexistence of various styles of worship places. The shrine on the right is part of the, is a very small shrine. I even forget where I took this picture, but you can see that the temple bell and the threshold. And now on the left hand side, this is not a temple. This is a bhandara. You know, it is used as a grain storage or for some the local deity temple. You know, the chariot, or not the chariot, but the palanquin on which the devtas are taken out on auspicious days. And so this is more like the village, you know, treasury, or you can say all the, and you can see the cart pony system for the lower area, and then the upper floors of. The other examples of this, you know, style, which is the pagoda style, you know, series of this. This is a Hridimba temple in Manali, but this is now no more in the old trade. They, you know, in the recent times they turned it into CGI seating, which was the British started. And you can see another stone temple. And by the way, stone temples were, while the villagers made simple, you know, temples they couldn't afford, then the stone temple was made only by the rulers, because a lot of money was required in the quarrying and the carrying, and you know, you required different you know, masons to. So the stone temples are not local settlement temples; they are were made by the rulers. Now this is this tiny little shrine, which it's a very interesting little shrine. If you go to Naldehra for a round of golf, Naldehra is close to you know, close to Peshawar, and right in the, I think it is the eighth or one of the, it is one of the oldest. Let me take you to another slide. No, sorry. I'll show you the golf course also later on. But this temple is right in the middle of, I think it's the 8th hole or something. And the caddy tells you that साहब आपको मारनी पड़ेगी ball जो मंदिर के ऊपर, ये this is a temple to the Nag Devta. A lot of stones snakes was there. जब आप ऐसे ऊंचे ये वाली शॉट मारिए, बॉल ऊपर से जाके टेम्पल और देवदा ट्रीज के, so you have to strike the ball high up in the air, and everyone respects the temple, and you better have the blessings of the temple god, otherwise you'll end up with a bogey. On the other hand, the monasteries of the Tibetans and the Buddhist monasteries are so very brightly, very, very colorful, and with their own motives of, you know, mythology, you know, those, and but the roofs are very pagoda roofs, very, very. I don't know how these lines are coming on the screen. I must have said something.
So I'm just trying to remove these annotations. Just a minute.
Can you do it? I don't know why, how this is. Thanks. This is the most beautiful site of vernacular architecture that at least I have seen in the world. This is a famous Bhimkali temple. And I also must tell you that in the Himachal Pradesh, the maximum temples are of the Devi, you know, the goddess Kali, you know, and its various incarnations. And you find that Nanda Devi, Tara, you know, all these, and different manifestations. And why only an expert would be able to say, but generally the belief, what I gathered from the people was that, you know, when you live in these remote areas, there are a lot of taking a walk. I mean, people have to move from one place to another, and at night it was infested with leopards and, you know, Garia, and all these, you know, even, you know, the panthers in those times. and ghost stories abound in the hills. You can read Ruskin Bond and you will know that the haunted house, the haunted forest, the spirit. So I think there were a lot of fear factors, and goddess, goddess was like the mother goddess, the protector and the savior, and I think the Devi cult, even Chandigarh is basically after the goddess Chandi. Now this is one, it's not just one temple, it's a temple complex. And one of the finest examples of urban, I mean, what we could call as an ensemble of building, a complex, a temple complex. And this was made by, the Raja of the Bushire, dynasty. And the peak that you see, the snow-capped peak, there is a festival held over there in summer. This is the Shrikhand peak, and this range is called the Kinnar Kailash. It's a marvelous, beautiful site. And this is perpetually covered in stone because we went there in summer, and you can imagine how marvelous it would be there in the winter. And the pagoda roofs are very much like the Japanese or the Chinese structures. I told you that the studies have been done by various groups of student architecture and I think by certain tech agencies also. So basically it is, 4 courtyards. There is one stone temple also. But it is the whole axial and a little offsetting. You ascend from the lowest level to the next level, then the next, then the next. And these are the 2 peaks. Actually, there are 2 towers. One was built later. It got little damaged, slightly tilted. Then it was repaired. Otherwise, nothing has happened to it. Again, in the 1905 earthquake. I think I should keep a track of time. I'm going on the few more slides to go. You can see the Kachkoni system for the lower areas, and the upper areas. On the balconies you have timber frame and lighter structure, and then the coverings are the same. Now you see, there is a logic behind everything. You can see how the slopes are. See, steeper at the gable, and then as they become, as they reach the eaves, and they begin to flatten out. Because the whole thing is very scientific. You need to slide off the snow or the rain from the ridge, from the gable, and then also slow down the speed with which the rain will come down, because I didn't see any system of gutters which came with the colonial architecture. And then the beautiful finials and the toppings. Now this is a silver door, which is got a lot of mythology and mythical figures. It's all was done there in. Now, incidentally, Bhimkali temples were made 800 years ago. 800. So that means somewhere around 1200. And I had gone there in my rickety car. You can see a bit of my family. Now, this is in the shrine. There would be the traditional sacrificial goat on, because the Shara in the hills is very different. Kullu Deshara. So this was the place where the sacrifices were done, and the priests told me so much of the local history. And then the goddess, you find that the riding the mythical figure of and the goddess is always shown with tigers, fierce and Mahasura. And these are the 2 towers. And now I come to the another beautiful place, and that is in Nagar, in the Kullu Valley. And this is a castle which was a palace which was made about 400 years ago by Raja Sid Singh. Now this picture was taken about 3-4 years ago. You can see what we do to our heritage areas. and nests of cars and dangling wires and such beautiful and phenomenal nature and the kind of horrible mismanagement that we have. And I will now show you a picture which I took when I told you when it was a holiday in the late 80s or 90s. You can see my electricity car when the numbers were just 3 digits. And look at the beauty of the Cartoni system of the alternative layer. You can see that there is a stone layer, then there is a timber layer, and so the joint, which is the corner joint, is the thing that I've shown with the details. Some more. It has been turned into a tourism hotel now, and very few castles, palaces exist. Mostly it's a temple architecture, and some glimpses. And recently it was redone when we went there 3 years ago. A little, but they've done the very well the restoration and the renovation. And it's a best place to have a lunch, and it's you can stay also there. This is the central shrine. There's a central shrine. Look at the carving. Look at and they have something like wind chimes. These are wooden, and they have bells, and they're like wind chimes. इनका नाम मत भूल रहा हूँ. और ऊपर का जो फ्लोर है उसको ब्रैकेट्स के साथ सपोर्ट करते हैं जो प्योरली टिम्बर का पार्ट है. And look at the stone, the beauty of it's all dry. There's no water at all. Now, one of the very odd places which we stumbled upon when we were driving to Narkanda, or a little beyond that, we could never afford hotels. We would stay in the PWD rest houses, कोई जुगाड़ लगा के, कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लगा के, and we एक रेस्ट हाउस हमें जहाँ जगह मिलती थी. When I woke up, we slept tired and all that stuff. When we woke up, there was a fascinating building over there. Its place is called Kumarten, and वहाँ लिखा हुआ था बिजली बोर्ड का दफ्तर हिमाचल. But I was intrigued that so I asked the चौकीदार that he said ये actually राजा साहब कुमारसेन के राजा हैं, वो नेपाली हैं, और वो अभी भी मैंने कहा कहाँ कहता हुए रहते हैं बीच में. I mean, obviously the heydays were gone, and you can see. So I was taking pictures, and one of the servants saw me, and I told him that I was an architect and all. And if I could meet His Highness, that was very nice. He went and gave the message to come. So we were invited, me and my wife and the children were invited the next day for a breakfast. And I mean, it's not, he was a marvelous, very erudite person, but more than the Rana story, this architecture is totally, it is Indo-Sasanic Islamic element, it's very old, and CGI sheet. So, the fusion of various influences. This is the, pagoda style, you have a dome, Indo-Sasanic, and there is a Islamic arch also. So fusion took place. And now I come to the few four slides. The change in the vernacular architecture, but in a way a little much better continuity came with the advent of the British Raj and the steam railway, because that enabled them to make 80 hill stations to get away from the heat and dust of the plain. And I have actually seen Kalka Simla railway with the days when we were a small child and annual sojourn to Simla. It used to be the steam engine. The top is of course of the railway. And the Britishers wanted to recreate a bit of the English village. If you drive through the Cotswold area or the Salisbury area in England, you'll find that it looks like a cleaner, better upper posh areas of the Indian hill station. So, but what they introduced in a more formal way was this Dhajji wall construction. हमारे ये villages में भी थी, मैंने उसकी examples अब मिलती नहीं है, but what they would also use in England as called the timber frame walls. You know, this is also a very interesting thing, and this of course is a similar structure and with the Gothic turret. And then if you see that this timber frame is actually the influence is of Dhajji, which is stone pebbles and some, mud, mixed with few local, binding materials, and these are very thin, just as much as 6-inch thin, and almost like paper architecture. But they were very efficient, very good. And this is a municipal corporation building. So these are almost like English villages. But what was the Dhajji wall was a common thing in the vernacular architecture also. You know, you just pack in some rubble with mud masonry, and a frame was made, and then so commonality between vernacular and. But such beautiful buildings they have created there for us, the municipal corporation building, which of course has been renovated in the recent times, and Bodoke stone, the local Bodoke stone, bluish grey, they created very magnificent structures. And look at the Mall Road. You know, there is almost like an artistic architectural control. Look at the rhythmic skyline. The shop fronts are all mishmash, which is okay. We don't want too much of order like Madhya Marg or Chandigarh. So there is but the basic principle of a pedestrian paradise, and this rhythm, I find always very, very beautiful and very, you can say exhilarating. You can see that there is a different, some older buildings are purely out of, timber frame, some stone, and some recent innovations. So it's a mishmash, but still, I think it's very beautiful. And one of the most beautiful structures is the Clarks Hotel. And just, when you ascend from the elevator and you're walking towards, it's very. And then the very grand, the Viceregal Lodge of the Institute of Advanced Study now. It is totally, now this is a very eclectic Elizabethan, God knows, it's fusion of so many, neoclassical style architecture which prevailed in Victorian England. And, but the interiors are very beautiful. Then the British had this Institute of Clubs, and this is the Nalzara Golf Club. It is one of the oldest golf clubs of India. It's completed more than 100 years, and in the century years, they restored many of the decaying things. I went there for a golf holiday and lost more balls than earned any cup. And this is a famous Kasoli club which got burned. So the Britishers introduced a kind of colonial architecture, but it is in sympathy with the hills because the sloping roofs and the color coding, which they reddish, most of them are red tin top. They kept the whole thing in control and in harmony. Now we come to the end. But what has happened after post-independence is that we have totally messed up our hill station. They have grown unscientifically. The pile foundations are buried into fragile hills, and they are seismically dangerous. They are environmentally, they stop the runoff of water. The trees are cut. Look at this some hotel very close to the ridge, and it is God knows how many stories. And so we have third-rate services, the electric. So we have made a hatch, and the hills are overly loaded, and they could be angry, and we could have disaster. So our new construction has to be very sensitive. I'm ending on a little more hopeful note. This is the Beckham's Resort, Nekapalli. And there are, of course, many questions that how many can afford. We don't have timber now. But I think the message from me would be that we can't replicate timber architecture. We don't have so much wood. But we should at least keep the spirit of that architecture, which is closer to the nature, closer to our cultural traditions, closer to our innocent decorations, aesthetic sense, which are community oriented. I think we have to learn to we have to reinvent our settlement, and more so, especially in the hills, where the relationship between nature and built form is primordial and has been very sensitively done in the past. So I come to the end, and I think no one has written more beautifully about the hills and the hill stations and the nature in hills than my favorite author, Ruskin Bond, who is also a bit of a friend. And when I want to visit him, and I asked him some photographs, and here are few lines from. So thank you very much. I come to the end, and I have taken about 10 minutes more. So I will now come back to the old screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I will now, if you want, you can stop sharing your screen now so that we can all come on. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And thank you so much, sir. There were so many things we learned in your one lecture, which is not just about vernacular architecture. I would now, before I say anything, I would like to throw open the floor to the audience, to the participants, in case anyone has any question, any query, any observation about anything, please feel free to share. Mr. Ramkrishna Rao, you can please start. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you so much. Really wonderful, sir. One of the key, it was really nice, engrossed the hour just went away like that. One of the key things that, I thought I must share with you, similar work I'm doing in Uttarakhand. There are no funds available for smaller people to restore, conserve, or keep. There are big CSR funds for 5-star hotels and Department of Archaeology. Why can't we establish a platform or a pro bono service from architects to allow conservation to take place at that level? At the level of individual house, where upkeep itself is difficult and those styles are going away. I'm just throwing this thought open, sir.
Of course, I'm totally in agreement. I told you that we can romanticize, but that is very difficult. The material, there are all kinds of issues. But if we want to take pride in our heritage, then I think the corporates or we can't depend on the impoverished state government. There has to be first an outcry. A lot of things have been saved in Shimla because of the intake and the such procedures. So, and as I said, that we need not replicate, even particularly if we build with more economical materials now, we can at least keep the aesthetics and the so both have to go in tandem. I think Rao, you made a very valid point that there's few things have to be saved, and funds and support must come from other sources. And there are few things which, a strict heritage guidelines should be framed, and also the architectural, rule laws, so that the new architecture is more pragmatic, but it is, not restrictive to people that they can't afford.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Vats,
I just wanted to ask you that these dhaji walls which you had shown, I have seen them a lot in the
Yeah.
district courts of Dharamshala, and in many buildings which were there. And our parents and other people used to say that they are there because of the earthquake, that they prevent damage due to earthquakes. Is it true that the kind of wood which is put in
That's
between the
right.
bricks?
Dr. Meenu Singh, I'm honored to have you on participating in this lecture. Incidentally, let me introduce Dr. Meenu Singh. Is hails from Himachal, from Palampur area, and is a very eminent statistician in the PGI. And she would probably know more than Dr. Vijender Singh, her husband. There, but coming back to actually all the whether it was the temples or the timber, that quartz corner system, and the Dhaji wall, of course, is a very light frame. You see, because these are not rigid, the concrete structures which are now coming, or the brick masonry structures which are now coming on the hills, are very rigid, and any tremor, the whole thing crumbles down like a house of cards, because their joinery got the flexibility, and the Dhaji wall is the most safest. Like, it's a very lightweight structure, very lightweight structure. So it's this, such kind of hazard.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful talk, sir.
And thank you.
So there is a question from someone who's asking, is it possible to interpret the vernacular knowledge of earthquake resistance using modern materials of today, or a combination of new and old materials in case materials are not available easily today? In fact, I see Savneet over here.
Earlier,
Yeah. Hanji sir, please go ahead.
I think we should have the input from Savneet. Yes, thank you so much. Savneet, would you like to talk on
Actually, I
this
see
question?
Savneet over here. I
Because
would
you
like
are
to
actually
introduce,
making...
I would like to introduce Savneet to all the participants. She's an alumnus of CCA, and she's actively working with vernacular techniques and vernacular architecture. She's been working with DD Contractor also. So I think a good person, a resource person we have right now who can answer that question maybe better, because you are designing like that. So Savneet, would you please like to take this question?
Yeah, I would. And firstly, thank you, sir, for a wonderful presentation. And what was even more enjoyable and interesting to see that it is all from your personal travels and things. So much more authenticated. And as far as this question that whether we can use, contemporary means to add on to the vernacular or improve it in any way, I think a good combination of using these, we've been doing that for nearly 15 years now in the Kangra region, where we are using a little of cement concrete and its advantages to add on to their local building vocabulary of slate roofs and mud walls, so as to add to the earthquake resistance. And also answering one more question, the first speaker who asked that if we could set up a fund for some kind of a pro bono fund for preservation of our vernacular. I think added to that, what is really important right now is that awareness in that area, because it's not just the government agencies or things which are converting them into offices. It's the locals who think that a concrete building that looks like, building in Zirakpur would be better in the hills. And so they're adapting to a concrete frame, glass walls and things. And they do not have the awareness where their own building vocabulary is far more suitable to that area. So a drive to increase that awareness, and wherever needed, if we are like sir rightly said, timber is now a commodity in great shortage, and we cannot afford to waste it like it was used. But a framework can be used where that kind of earthquake resistance is needed. Then other disadvantages that the locals had using the vernacular can be replaced by a little modification. One of the reasons why the locals leave their vernacular vocabulary is because of modern necessities. So when we try to, provide that, let's say a better services and their roofing, if it's a slate roof, the monkeys can break through. If we can have a thinner layer of a waterproof or a, solid material between that roof, those improvisations can actually help to preserve the vernacular and give the locals a sense of their own building, but with the modern conveniences. So that is something that we are, continuously researching and trying to adapt in some of the buildings and things that we've been doing in that area under the Imarat Center for Earth Architecture. And continuously the research goes on. Most of our work is based in the Kangra region, so we're trying to improvise on that. But yes, I think a lot more research and experimentation in trying to preserve our vernacular and of course contemporize it. So yes, we need to go ahead with that.
Deepak, can I just have one quick word?
Sure, sir.
I want to thank Savneet and tell her I'm also from CCA. What I meant by pro bono was pro bono service of architects, not fund. That may be under the flagship of Professor Wattas. We must get together and say we will do your small house of 100 square feet or 200 square feet, which still has some style left in it. Because other buildings similar, all that has a lot of funds anyway coming from various agencies. That was what I meant.
Oh yes, that's a brilliant idea, sir. We've already been doing that for the last few years under freelance association like that under Misal, where we have architects from the Auroville Earth Institute, DD Contractor, Dharmalaya, who are kind of volunteering and working in this area to contribute their services or time or something for workshops for students, locals, and you're welcome to join. You can log on to misal.org and see. It's a volunteer architects and like-minded professionals organizations. So that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
we also had a similar idea some years ago.
I hope it really, fructifies, and that would be a great achievement. This is the whole aim of having a platform like this, where people who don't know each other but who are doing the same kind of work in other places, we come together, we have a common platform. And I think, sir, जो pro bono वाली बात कर रहे थे, even जो research वाली, I mean, it's a separate topic altogether, but a little part in that I think that we have a lot of scope for targeted research. हमारे यहाँ research एक तो architects वैसे ही बहुत कम करते हैं, and most of the research that we say is actually just a repetition of facts, like a collection of facts. जैसे like Savneet was saying that we could research on a new material. How can we solve a problem in vernacular architecture using modern techniques? So I think somewhere that that research is not playing the role it should, because I am from a college of architecture also, and I see that usually the kind of PhDs that are happening, the kind of research that is happening, it's very repetitive. It does not contribute to anything tangible. We focus too much on ideas, which of course is necessary, but we do need targeted research on these areas. Like how to balance this out, how to use modern technology to the aid of vernacular, and of course creating funds, etc. is a different thing altogether. So thank you so much, Savneet, for that answer, and I hope and if any one of you needs to get in touch with Savneet, maybe, so you can just message me, and I can, if she wants, I can share her her contact with you.
Most right.
We need to, and in fact, we plan to invite Savneet also for that lecture of vernacular architecture in the college, and we can have it again on this forum also. Any other? So thank you so much, Savneet. Any other question? Any other point anyone else would want to discuss? Any other question? Anything you would like to share? Okay, if there are no questions from others, I have two questions of my own, sir. जो मैं last time की students थे तो मैंने पूछा नहीं था. But basically, like जो ये हमारा एक जो ये है. First of all, of course, I need to thank you formally for that lecture. I think it was almost like, I can almost smell the deodars, and I almost feel the crisp cold air, of the mountains. And I'm sure it was almost like, if someone is on a strict diet and you show him samosas and pakoras and say, okay, see, this is what you're missing. So in a way, it was like that. Also, it was a little torturous also to, see. I think we all have been to Himachal. We have all experienced many of these beautiful places, although we did not see them in that light. But it was bittersweet in the sense that we got a hint of what Himachal was and what we are missing, but we got to see it also. And as someone pointed out, that I must compliment the photography that you have done. It is so, it's neither very academic or clinical. and you have captured the spirit of Himachal. You know, like when you have a photograph with the people, with the vernacular setting, and the mountains in the backdrop, you have captured that really well. So thank you for sharing these amazing photographs also. One thing I want to ask is that, you know, like it's a question on vernacular architecture. You know, in the plains, a very common device that we use to give this feeling of monumentality is that we raise something on a level. You know, we basically put it on a pedestal and suddenly it rises up on a plane. You know, on a plane it's easy to do that. It's very interesting to know that in vernacular architecture, in hill architecture, you know, you have a backdrop of these Dhauladar hills maybe, or the Himalayas or whatever. In that, you know, how do you create this feeling of I mean, they don't try to fight the mountains, basically. They don't try to dominate the landscape. So how do you think they achieve that? You know, like if you see these examples of the temples that you have shown, that how do you think that they achieve this sense of monumentality in a setting where the backdrop is just so majestic that you can't get over that?
I think, you know, the Himalaya, nobody can outride or outcover the Himalayas. And those are the
Yeah.
inner Himalayas. The peaks are much too high. And also the very fact that you know, the roof system is moving. The gable roof always is like a mountain peak. So it is very much in rhythm with the skyline. And thirdly, wood is the texture and the aesthetics of wood. Now, I mean, it's wonderful. Just close the eyes and imagine that Deen Kali temple was built in Bethel Grove of Kabuzia. You know, I don't think it would evoke even with the same scale and with the same form. That would never happen. But the stone, the slate, the layered timber beams. So the materials, you know, they make the whole thing, as Mr. Rawal had said in the panel discussion about 3 days ago. He used a very beautiful term. In India, we still, you know, on the side. In the West, they assemble. I mean, it's like uh, it is handcrafted. It's like, you know, hand woven. And so that, and from the local materials. So that, you know, and obviously the temple, even the Pinkali temple is 4-story high. And so the mountains are, I mean, it is far more, I mean, they are going up to, you know, 18,000, 19,000. And so the scales are different, the materials are very organic, and there's no, it's not like a Manhattan on the hills, but we are trying to make, we are making such a mess of our hill station. We are trying to create crore bags and Gurgaons on the hills now. So that is something which should be totally by law, by heritage laws, should be very important. Our hill stations are still not having any, you know, bylaws, which are, they require them far more than a city like Chandigarh. And I would like to also welcome in the Mr. Hemant Malhotra, my class fellow, who is the chief architect of Jammu and Kashmir, who would be even able to answer or know much more about the beautiful timber architecture of. Hello, Hemant, you're still there?
Hello, hello. Kira Gannan.
So, Mr. Here we have a distinguished person like him, my friend, my class fellow. He architect. Hemant, why don't you contribute to this discussion?
Hello. Are you listening?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, yes. Yes, I will add 1 or 2 points only. Then selection of site in the hills. That is very important. In hills, initially we used to use southern slopes only. Northern slopes are not used because of the winter, severe winter. This is one point. Then they were doing, they were providing no openings on the northern elevations of the buildings, no openings. they were exposing the buildings on the southern front only, southern or eastern. That second point is the slopes designed on the hills, they were scientific. They were designed in such a way that 2 to 4, 5-inch snow can stay and additional snow will slide. That was the calculated angle in the hills. That is very important. That are the 2 points I want to add. Thank you.
That is an interesting point about the slope being just enough to retain a 2-inch layer of snow.
2 to 4 inch.
Yeah,
4 inches.
because that acts as an insulation.
That acts as a insulator.
Yeah,
insulator.
yeah, that is very interesting.
And top floor, which you told, was used mostly for the fodder.
Fodder, yeah.
Top floor. Because I did thesis at that times when I did thesis on this ski lodges at Gulmarg. I studied, that time there was no prototype studies and there were no places to see. Then I studied from the books and I got some references from the embassies, various embassies from Colorado and other places. So in alpines, they used to follow this principle. In alpine hills, the lower portion was used by the animals, middle was a habitable area, and top was the feeder.
Yeah.
And they were using only southern fronts, not northern fronts of the hills, because there was more snow on the northern fronts. And they were using such positions of the building, placing in such a way that they can wave off the winds. Buildings were not coming in line with the winds, in direction of the winds. Direction of the wind was also very important in the hills. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to share something?
Hello.
Anji Bhim sir, we can hear you.
Hello,
Hanji sir. Sir, being an artist.
Welcome, Bhim.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So being an artist, I enjoyed your presentation. It was really nice, and the beauty of hill architecture, the way you have captured, it is really remarkable, sir. And very refreshing, sir. I enjoyed your presentation, sir.
Thank you, sir. I hope आपको मिलेगी for paintings.
Yeah. Very refreshing, very nice, nicely captured.
Thank you for joining, sir. Thank you.
And thank you, Deepika.
I would like to, I think I didn't mention it, that most of the pictures were taken 20 years ago, 30 years on Ektachrome slide. And when you convert them into digital, the quality is a little lost, but I think I myself felt happy. So it's also like a nostalgic journey for me.
Very refreshing, sir. Very refreshing, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions or any other...
Yeah, I'd just like to add a word, thanking Professor Vatas and letting others know that he was my guide in college, and it was his photography and his Himachal articles that motivated my journey that side.
Oh, wow.
So, and this seeing this presentation all over again has been so enthralling and so satisfying, and I'm eternally thankful to sir for that kind of, inspiration and guidance all along. So it was wonderful hearing the presentation. Thank you.
And Mr. Bhim Malhotra, for those who don't know, is a very eminent artist and chairman of Chandigarh Lalit Kala Academy. His watercolors and oils are, in global galleries also. Thank you, Bhimji, for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think with this, thank you. I would like to thank the audience also for being over here with us. And I have had some messages in the chat wherein you wanted to know about how to know about the other webinars that we'll be having. So for now, I think what we can do is that there is an email ID. I have given my email ID at the back of the invitation in the second one. you could just send me a mail over there, and we have a group by the name of ArchiChats, and I will add you in that if you just send me your phone number, and on that we share all the posters and all the information, and even about this one. So if you want to join that ArchiChats, you're most welcome. And you don't have to be an architect to be a part of ArchiChats, although the name is ArchiChats, but deliberately chats because we want it to be a platform like this where people from all walks of life can join, where we can spread the word about architecture, about how it touches so many human aspects. And it is not technical. We keep holding events on art also, on other related subjects also. So if you want to join, you can just send an email at that account. And I think if there are no more queries or any comments that you would like to share, then I would like to thank Professor Vattas again for such a delightful presentation in his own typical style. And as everyone is saying, the visuals are so fresh, and they're so, even after 20 years, they capture the essence of Himachal, and that is the most important thing. Even a photograph taken today may not be able to capture that, but that is the whole way you have been able to capture it. So thank you again, and thank you to all the participants. We look forward to...
Just,
Hanji sir.
Deepika, I just want to share with everyone that we have another very eminent person, Mr. Sudeep Paul is also, I noticed his name now, he's the editor-in-chief of Architecture Plus Design magazine. So thank you, Sudeep, for finding time, and it's pouring webinars for you, and you're invited everywhere. So I'm truly honored and very gratified that you found time on an evening to be shared. Would you like to say something, Sudeep?
Oh, hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
okay. Well, very, very good evening to everybody. I thought I would be a silent spectator, but it's so wonderful. I would first of all like to sort of really congratulate you on this new enterprise that you have initiated, the series, the lecture series. And I'm sure over a period of time, this is going to sprout and blossom, because architecture being what it is, and Chandigarh being a hub of architecture, I think should take these initiatives to go forward. I mean, Chandigarh has always made a mark for architecture, being a workshop of architecture. I think that legacy needs to be carried forward, and this is a beautiful step. There's so many other initiatives which Ms. Gandhi, I think, I was just listening to, which are being taken. So I wish you all the best on this enterprise, and always available, and would love to participate wherever possible. And it was very insightful, as usual. Professor Vattas's talk, a lot has been said about it. And my last comment would be that yes, vernacular that has been existent is very, very relevant. But we also, during the course of these talks and otherwise, talking about vernacular, I think one should really also look at how this traditional vernacular is giving a newer meaning, a new vocabulary, which is getting initiated. And that is also equally relevant. The past is relevant, and the present and the future also, because there's lots that is happening in contemporary vernacular as such, So kudos to the initiatives.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your comments. And we will, of course, keep you posted about our future endeavors also. And any other comments? I think I see a hand raised up, but I don't have a name. It's just a number 342901. So would you like to add anything? Would you like to ask something? I don't know whether it is by Hanji sir. Yeah, I can see you. I can see that you've raised your hand to ask something. Please go ahead. Okay, I think the hand was raised by mistake. Okay, I think with that we can wind up our session today. And as I said, if people, I'm sure many people have got information from some other sources also. And I will just look at, there are two chats. Okay, there is no other question to be asked. So again, I thank you so much, Professor Vattas, and thank you everyone for being a part of this. And we will keep sharing the next webinar series that we have, the next speakers that we have. So thank you so much. And as I said, if you have any suggestions, if you have any good speakers in mind, we would be most happy to accommodate them. So I thank you all again. And sir, should we call it a day now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Professor Vattas. Thanks for being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.